Welcome to another video podcast of She Speaks Fierce, females inspiring and empowering real change everywhere. I'm Kat, your friend and sister in this journey of inner strength and self-empowerment. Just a couple things to note. We have a new website, www.shethinksfierce.com. That's She Thinks Fierce, ShethinkSfierce.com, where you can find all of our social media connections on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, as well as our podcasts, YouTube videos, and recent newsletters. If you don't receive our current free weekly newsletter reminding you about how awesome and powerful you are, please go to the website, click on any Substack newsletter, click subscribe, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share all of our content with all of the amazing women you know. Today, we are going to hear from another one of my favorite women in the world, a wife and mother of 7, world traveler, expat extraordinaire, and design artist, Michelle Ross. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? So excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself to get started?
Yes, my husband works for the State Department, and so we traveled overseas for several different assignments. Sometimes he would go on assignment without us, sometimes, and we would stay stateside, and sometimes he would go to places that we could not be. But we had some really great experiences traveling overseas with our 7 children, and just it just had such a profound impact on how we view the world and the experiences that we have and the strength and bonding that it gave to our family. It was just a wonderful experience.
So just to clarify, you're originally from the US?
Yes.
Yes. And traveling with 7 kids abroad. Wow. That sounds like a challenge.
Yes. Well, they're great travelers, thank goodness. But yes, we had our method was often that my husband would lead the way through the airport, and then there were 7 children in descending order. I was the tail end to make sure that we didn't lose anyone going through the airport. So I always got all of the shocked and amazed faces as they watched this man with this 7, children trailing behind him like a little duck family. But they are just fantastic travelers, and we all have really grown to love our international experiences.
Well, I mean, I have like flashbacks of Home Alone coming to my head, so I guess it was probably good you were bringing up the rear. I'm sure
Yeah,
you would have had at least 1 or 2, probably 2, end up in different places by themselves
definitely.
otherwise.
Definitely.
Okay. So, which countries have you guys lived in while you've been abroad?
So we lived in Kathmandu, Nepal was our first experience together as a family. My husband was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then we lived in China, Beijing, China, and we lived in Mauritius. We also lived in El Paso for 4 years, which felt like Mexico light.
Okay.
And America, the best of both worlds. And so
Right on the border of Mexico. Okay.
the border from our house, and we spent a lot of time going back and forth. So it felt like an experience in Mexico as well. So
Okay. What was the hardest part about living in countries like this?
well, it's always hard to lose or to be away from the things that are familiar to you. But it's and just to be away from family and friends when things are happening, when they're celebrating, or when hard things happen, or like during COVID, things like that. That was challenging, to be away from home. But we just have always just tried to dive in wherever we were and just have the full experience of whatever that country had to offer and those people. And we've just really enjoyed so much all of the great experiences. It's kind of the mosaic of life to be able to see all the different cultures and people and how they live and what they eat and how they celebrate and how they mourn and how they, their politics, all of it. It can be a challenge, but it can also be very exciting to be a part of and to see. It's
I'm sure
definitely changed how we see the world.
I'm sorry. I'm sure there must have been a little bit of a learning curve, your first trip abroad.
It definitely, it was interesting. When we first got into the State Department, we met some of the other families that had been doing it for quite some time. There were a lot more seasoned travelers than we were, and I remember seeing very quickly how much the attitude of mom made such a difference as to how the family adjusted to the experience.
Interesting. Okay.
That saying, if mom's not happy, nobody's happy.
Yes.
And I could see, like, it was very clear, and I'm not advocating that you should lie, but it was very clear if mom was falling apart, if she was not handling the transition well, then the children were not going to either, and it was going to be very difficult on pretty much everyone around them. And that's not isolated to just the family. Like when you're overseas, especially in an expat community, like that becomes your family because you're away from your home and family.
Sure.
And so if you're not adjusting well, then it's going to also impact your community in that respect as well, not just your family. So I saw very quickly what a responsibility that was, to try to create a positive, good, an uplifting experience and transition. And it's a heavy responsibility, but I think it's such an important one to recognize the power of our influence through whatever our attitude is. If we act like we're excited about the transition and the new things we're going to experience, even though there are hard things, it's hard to know, like, where to do your grocery shopping and where to do your dry cleaning, or like if there is even a grocery store in some circumstances. There wasn't at first in our very first post. So it's, there are a lot of really big challenges that can be very scary, especially if you don't speak the language or things like that. But to approach the world with kind of wonder and excitement for what you're going to experience and discover about that new place is such an important place to start. And it kind of carries over to other people. If they see that you're excited about a new thing, then you can kind of comfort some of the fears. They fade away a little bit more to the background, even though you still have a lot of things you have to confront.
So how do you maintain that positive mental and emotional well-being during the really challenging times, and especially during those transitions?
Well, I always, there's a lot of personal, care kind of things. I try to exercise, I try to eat healthy, try to get good sleep, which is not easy when you're jet lagged or transitioning or moving, those kinds of things.
No, definitely
Um,
not.
and you don't know, what groceries are going to be available, those kinds of things. And so it can be rather challenging. My spiritual practices, with reading scriptures and prayer and things like that, have been essential part of that process. I was in a position of to be able to help some of the new families coming in, that were with both our embassy community and with our church community. And so I was able to identify kind of like, what do I wish other people had done for me? Help me go get my first groceries, and help me, like learn where things are, like where's the bus stop? How do I, help find a good place to eat, or, like how do I get help for something, or taxis or things like that. And so I was able to kind of help people through that part. But even that can be very overwhelming, even, and so one of the things I always made sure we also did was to take them to do something fun that helped them see their new country and what it had to offer. So for instance, one of my
Yeah,
favorite things
examples.
was street food, like, and so I would take them to where this is a safe place to get the street food, and they would have the full cultural experience of the street food, and they always left with a smile, and it just, like, okay, I'm gonna be all right. This is fun, and just it was so helpful just to be able to experience something positive.
And who doesn't like good food? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to warm up when you're, feeling a little bit shy and uncertain. Okay.
Right. Yes. I think it's important also in a world that focuses so much on how much we don't have in common, to find the things, first of all, that we do have in common. Human emotions are the same pretty much everywhere throughout the world. People are afraid of certain things. People are sad. People are, they celebrate, they love, they care, they have anxieties and fears. But it's so important, I think, to embrace where you're at, and to be open to what they believe, other people believe, but also to share what you believe. So one of the things that we tried to do was invite people into our home. I remember one of my friends talking about, she had a certain piece of art that the kids knew, when that piece of art, when that picture was hung on the wall, that no matter where in the world they were, that was home. And it got me thinking about, like, okay, so what signifies to my children this is home? And I realized that for us, it was our tradition of, we had weekly pizza night. We would home make pizza, and that became like the anchor. Like, everybody knew, no matter where in the world we were, if we were having pizza night on Friday or Saturday night, then that was home. And we
It's a great
got to the point
tradition.
where people would hear about it, or that we would invite them in to our home to, make pizza with us. And so that became something that people really looked forward to, and that was kind of a shared tradition of ours, that helps you kind of see, the things that you do have in common, or that you just kind of can enjoy, and share your traditions. And sometimes that meant we had to bring back pepperoni from America, because not all the countries had pepperoni. And
Okay.
sometimes we had yak cheese on our pizza,
Oh,
but we kept
wow.
the tradition going. And it was always such a fun social experience to share with others, to help them feel, connected to, and it's all about making connections with people, and having a good attitude, and being so open to and appreciating what your similarities are, but also celebrating the really great things that are your differences as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, pizza night to me is a fantastic way to do this. I can't remember ever finding someone who didn't like pizza
Exactly.
ever in any country. And I've done this as well in my time as an expat. Host pizza nights where everyone makes their own pizzas and everyone brings toppings, and you get some really creative mixes and people have fun, and it's just, good food and good experience, and no matter what, people are gonna feel comfortable.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a great experience.
I think it's important to get involved wherever you are, in whatever community that is, whether it's at home or abroad. Um, and that always kind of gives additional perspective, that there's always someone that has things harder than you. So especially in those times when I was felt challenged, that it felt hard, or I was homesick or whatever, then it helped me to be able to see, actually my life is a good life. Even though there are hard things, there's always someone else that you can help lift. And I
Sure.
remember one point, my one of my kids was really frustrated about not being home, and feeling homesick, and feeling kind of sorry for himself and stuff. And we had the opportunity to go work at an orphanage. And so I invited him to go with me, and he was grumbling about it and just did not want to go. And I was just, like, just please come with me.
Not fun for a kid.
And my teenager, it's just, he was very kind of self-consumed with not feeling happy about where his life was going. And we went and worked that morning, served in the orphanage. Just, and our only job was to just hold and talk to these children that hardly ever had human interaction, you know. And I just remember after the fact, like, he just felt so humbled, and he came home, he's like, wow, I have nothing to complain about, do I? And I was like, it gives you perspective, you know. It just, but that's something that has always helped, is in those moments when you could easily slide into the pity party, find someone to help, you know, find someone to serve, and, you know, to share what you have. And it goes a long way in helping kind of build morale and just lift wherever you can. Have that good attitude, and try to find ways for your family to, or the people within your influence, to be able to share with that experience. I don't, you know, don't feel like you have to keep that just yourself, but try to find other opportunities for other people to engage with that as well.
How important would you say the power of positivity has been for you in all of this?
Oh, it's huge. There have been some hard things that we've gone through. We've had some of the scariest are, you know, if there's political upheaval when we're away from home, or if there's COVID. COVID was a scary one, or some medical emergencies where you could really, you know, like, you're reminded that things are very unfamiliar, very different than what you're comfortable with. And so just believing that, you know, we have always treated every single assignment when we've gone overseas and at home, honestly, we've always treated them as if it were kind of we were in being ambassadors. We were being either, you know, missionaries or ambassadors, representing our, not only our personal beliefs, but our country, or, you know, things like, because a lot of people, when we go overseas, that's their one and only encounter with an American.
Sure.
And so, and I realize this is an international audience, and it's just so important that we show people, you know, the good things that we have, and the things that we have in common, and things that are beautiful and wonderful about each other as we encounter one another. And so it was always so frustrating to me when I would see other, you know, country, you know, citizens from our country, and they would go and kind of to do what we call the ugly American things.
The stereotypes that you
Oh,
kind of
it
push
just,
against. Yes.
yes, it was always so frustrating, but we always took that very seriously. Just to try and be that good face, that kind, good person, that their one interaction, like, well, you know, I want them to be able to say, well, I met an American once, or, you know, like, this family, or what have you, and it was a positive experience for them, and that it was genuine and authentic. So we've always taken that very seriously.
Yeah. So, can you share any times or experiences when you felt a really deep sense of belonging where you were?
Um, Probably the most was, like I said, when I had the opportunity to kind of be a hostess to all the incoming families.
Where were
We
you
had
at the time?
that one was in Beijing.
Okay.
We had about 35 families that I was responsible for, and it just, it really just, you know, you have that sense of purpose, like, you're trying to strengthen, and as specifically, my responsibility was over the women of this group. And so I felt really strongly, like, if I empower these women, then they will turn and empower their families. And I
Yeah.
really felt the sense of that. And so I took that very seriously, that give the women the tools that they need, uplift them, support them, strengthen them, encourage them, and help them have positive experiences, and to look forward with faith and with optimism. And they will in turn be able to disseminate those same, you know, blessings and qualities to the people that are in their lives, their families, and their communities. I
What
take that
would
very
you,
seriously.
sorry, what would you say was an overwhelming, if there were a few feelings or things that really needed support most from these women, what would you say was most common for them?
You know, our group was pretty affluent. They all were very financially very comfortable, and so that was a little bit of a challenge for me initially to determine what are their needs. But I found that they were emotional. Like it's, you know, those moments when you're homesick. And I remember one of my friends coming to me and saying like she'd found a Yankee, you know, it's this famous candle brand that has these delicious smells, you know, that's American based. And she'd found this candle store in Beijing, and she said, I paid $100 for a candle from home. And you kind of you do kind of want to connect to anything from home, that smell that reminds you of memories, those foods that remind you. And you will at times of weakness feeling homesick, you will pay a lot. Like I remember people paying a lot for a special meat that we would have for our traditional Thanksgiving for Americans. They would pay almost $100 for a turkey.
Oh, wow.
And in America, you would never have to pay that. That's not the prices. But when you're away from home and you just want those things that are familiar that you can connect to, even though you're having a wonderful experience, you still miss certain things from home from time to time, and you're willing to pay a pretty high price for them.
Oh, I am right there with you. It's fall time. This is my season. Pumpkin. I miss
Yeah.
everything pumpkin spice. And I
Yeah.
will go out of my way to find pumpkins to make pumpkin cheesecake. I just saw somewhere the other day that was showing a pumpkin spice latte. I'm all over it. I mean, Europe, I'm in Germany right now, so to find a pumpkin spice latte is like hitting the jackpot.
Yeah. I will say another thing that I would suggest is such an important part of having a good attitude is trying to keep a good sense of humor. And I have two stories that were kind of funny ones. The first one happened, both of these happened in China. The first one was our dishwasher would shock you when it was wet, which is always wet.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Because it is a dishwasher. And so, and then the oven was very, very hot. It would get very, very hot. You couldn't adjust the temperature to it. And so we called the repairman. The embassy had told us, you know, like first try to take care of it yourself, call in a repairman, and then if you can't get it figured out, then we'll help you. So my son and I were the only ones at home during the day, and of course the two of us that don't speak any Chinese. So we learned really quick that you had to get really good at charades. And I just remember, you know, like you were sitting there trying to use charades and describe to him like what happens when we touch the dishwasher, we get shocked. And finally I told my son, I was like, grab his hand and make him get shocked. Like you have to show him. He grabbed his hand and touched the dishwasher, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, like understanding. I was like, huh. And you just have such a strong sense of being understood and being able to communicate. But sometimes you just have to have that sense of humor, and you find yourself desperate to use whatever tools you can
Yes.
to understand or to be understood, you know. And then when it came to the oven, I could like we did find someone that could help translate. And he kept going back and forth, and he just did not understand. Like in America, we have ovens that you can adjust the temperature, and he was not used to, you know, like to him it was like, well, this gets hot. Like what is the matter? Like it gets hot. And I was just like, well, but it burns all my food because I cannot adjust the temperature. And I could tell he was so frustrated, and he was like, well, and I was also telling him that like the door of it gets very, very hot, like it burns you. And he completely reached frustration level when I could tell he said something in Chinese, and he's like, well, then don't touch it. And I just told the translator, like, you don't even need to translate that. I totally get it. And you just kind of had to laugh, you know, like this is just a comical situation, things that you take for granted, the comforts of home, being able to communicate in your own language and
Sure.
to
Yeah.
understand and to be understood. And sometimes you just have to laugh. Like this is just another funny experience that I will get to remember for many years.
Uh-huh. Okay. If it's not actually from being an expat, I'm sure you've got some really fun travel mishaps as well, traveling with 9 people.
Well, I wouldn't say most of the time we had very positive interactions. People would see us with our children and just be so impressed. Like I said, my kids are good travelers. They're good, polite children, and they just, they loved the experience. We just, we all have travel fever. It's something that I don't think will ever go away. After seeing so many wonderful places in the world, I will say one of the funnier moments was we were going to a place that was a restaurant that's Mexican food. And we got there, and on the door it said, we're closed for renovations, but if you like our food, then you should go to our sister restaurant, which is an Italian restaurant. So we decided, we weren't sure from the sign if that meant that they were, like, you can't have Mexican food, but go try the Italian food at this other place. So we got to the Italian food restaurant, and sure enough, they were giving both menus, the
Oh,
Mexican and the Italian menus. So
impressive.
you can order from both of the restaurants at the Italian restaurant, and we had Chinese waiters and waitresses. We were listening to Bollywood music. We were in an Italian restaurant ordering Mexican food. And you just kind of had to just laugh. You're just like, what life am I living? And like, where am I? And there were just several moments like that where, again, you just kind of have to laugh. Just the sense of humor is such a key part of being able to maintain good morale and appreciate the differences are okay, and
Yeah.
that it's just
And
choose
sometimes even the
not to
most
be
beautiful
frustrated.
parts, right?
Yes,
Is
yes,
going through some of these really interesting,
yeah,
very unique kinds of experiences.
exactly. Yeah. One of the other experiences I had was when we were in Nepal. I was trying really hard to figure out how to connect with the women there. It was very clear, like the the expat women in our community did not at all relate to the Nepalese women. Our lives were very different. Like the women there were very hard workers. They were working out in the fields, and they were just living a life that was not relatable to us. Our lives were very different. Most of us, if we worked, we were working in the office and not in the field, and just all of these differences that seemed really magnified. That there's just, I kept wondering, like, how are we going to connect to each other? And I finally realized that one of the things that we had in common was that most of the women in the group liked to do their nails. Both, you know, the Nepalese women and the expat women, they
Okay.
liked to do their nails. And I was a beautician by trade, and so that's something I felt like I could connect to. I was like, okay, we've got something to work with. We've got beauty as a
Yes.
common ground, and it was
Anywhere
fun
to
because,
start.
yeah. So we did pedicures together, and they I invited them into my home. We had a trampoline, and they'd never seen a trampoline before. And so
That's a
at
fun
first
one.
it was just the children on the trampoline, and then I told them, I was like, you go try, it's very fun. And they got on the trampoline, and then after that they wouldn't let the kids back on the trampoline because the moms wanted to be on the trampoline the whole time. They
I love
made
it.
some wonderful food for us, and I made lasagna, and some of the things they eat with their hands, which is some of our most favorite food in the whole world. And we just loved that. But I also, like, made lasagna for them, and was like, but you don't want to eat this with your hands because you'll burn yourself a lot. So we just really enjoyed kind of sharing our different customs and traditions, and it was such a joy to be able to do that, to focus on the things we had in common rather than how many things we did not relate to or understand about each other.
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes it can be hard to find those little moments or those things that might be in common. I feel like it's not really a natural thing to want to pull to what do we have that's the same when everything around you looks so different.
For sure.
But I mean, this is definitely the most important part about learning about being in other people's space, about other people being in your space, right? Like having somebody that you clearly know is not from your town or city or state or country, and welcoming them in, it can be really a very daunting task to try to find something that you have in common. But
for sure.
I mean, to me, this is the only way for me to really feel like I get the local experience is when I meet someone who is from this place and who can kind of share with me part of their life. And that is great joy for me to be able to experience as well.
Well, and I would say, I mean, we just moved, we moved in Virginia. We were in Northern Virginia, big city area, and then we moved out just 3 hours away in the same state still. But even that was a cultural exchange for us. Like
Sure.
it felt like they spoke differently, they eat differently, they dress differently. And it was surprising how moving only 3 hours away and out into the country could make such a huge difference. And yet it's, and here we are, we still speak the same language even, and we still have the same stores mostly and things like that. But again, to focus on, first of all, let's celebrate some of those differences that thank goodness we're not all the same. And second of all, let's find those things. I know. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's one of the things that makes life a beautiful mosaic is that we have all of these differences.
I would hate to find a whole bunch of me out there. I gotta say, I love myself, but this would be a very
I agree. I love to hear people's stories, and it requires you to have to get outside of yourself and to have that openness and that attitude that you just, you want to experience the good things in life and to serve and help and to be that influence for good wherever you are.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you one more question. So you've shared a lot of how you integrated and helped other people integrate. Can you recall a moment where you were overwhelmed by the kindness and compassion of others?
The 3 times actually that we had a medical emergency of sorts, that puts you in a position of feeling very vulnerable. And especially when it's your child, something happened to your child. I mean, it's hard enough when it's happening to you, but
Sure.
but that made it especially a fearful situation. But we just, we've had people around us that have kind of pitched in and helped, and I've always trusted, that God was there to help us. Like we tried to spread and be, as much good wherever we could. And whether you call it karma or blessings from God or whatever you want to call it, like I've always trusted in that if we were trying to do our part to do good wherever we were, that we would receive that. And we did. We had people, come and bring us meals and check up on us, and just lots of people's prayers and just well-wishing and things like that in those moments when you feel you're most vulnerable and you're most fearful, that we've had a support and a community kind of rally around us. And that has been a powerful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, as someone who is also had a medical emergency abroad, you are in a very special place, especially when the people you're trying to communicate with don't speak any English whatsoever, and Google Translate does not translate well into all languages. So finding the little angels that come along and that somehow they do appear to be just sent from God, really. They just appear at the perfect moment, and they're able to do everything, and then they're out the door immediately after. And I mean, they accomplish nothing short of miracles.
I agree.
That's definitely
a beautiful. And I like to believe that, like I said, we are all trying to do our part. And when we are trying to do our part, then, the good comes back to you in those moments when you have need.
Well, As we wrap up, is there anything else overall that you would like to end with today? A message that you can share with our ladies today?
Just believe in the power that you have to influence those within the circle of your realm, whether that's your family, your community, your school, your job, wherever you may be. I really truly believe in the power of a woman's attitude and her optimism and her kindness, her compassion, and that she can make the world a better place. And you know, through serving and helping others, your burdens are often lifted as well. That it's, you know, it's something that's we have so much power as women to be able to influence for good, to have that positive attitude, and to lift and help others.
That is absolutely what She Thinks Fierce, She Speaks Fierce is here to do, is to bring us all together to show us we do have a lot more in common than we think we do, even though there are some things culturally and in beliefs and in other areas that at the end of the day, at the core of who we are, we're all these powerful, amazing women who can literally shift the world. And I my goal is to make sure that every woman understands her inner glory and her inner strength and can help the women and the people in general around to be able to understand the same thing. I'm
I
absolutely
completely agree.
certain we can
Yep,
change
I
the
love
world.
what you're trying to do here, and I completely agree.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I always love hearing your stories because they're
Well,
so
thanks,
inspiring as an
Scott.
expat myself. And don't forget, to all of our women listening, we have our new website. Go and check it out if you haven't seen some of the newsletters or if you haven't seen our previous interviews. It is at www.shethinksfierce.com. We're so grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us once again. Everybody, have a great week, and we will see you next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Bye.